Hi everybody, my name is Andy Vassar. I'm the CCIE Collaboration Instructor here at iPexpert. And I wanted to take this time to go through the Proctor Labs website, go through some of the features and some of the things you're going to have access to when you get into your pod. Also, I wanted to go through some of the hardware setup and software setup so you can actually get to the pod through a VPN. And in addition to just getting to the pod, you can actually connect your hard phones as well, up to 7 phones, through your own home network, and we can tunnel those back to our network so you can connect into the pod. So essentially it looks like your phones are plugged into the switches themselves in your own pod. So we'll go over that configuration. Obviously it's not going to be a whole lot of work on your end. All that's been done. It's just a matter of how do you actually do it? How do you, what are the steps to execute it? So obviously, it's a good idea to have hard phones for the CCIE collaboration only because that's what it's going to be in the test. I mean, you're going to be interacting with phones that are next to you on the desk, so you want to make sure that you have that practice in with the actual phone itself. If you don't happen to have hard phones, it's okay. You can still use our Proctor Labs equipment, and how you would do that is through this application called Phone View, and it's by Unified FX. So Phone View is going to allow you to interact with the different phones that are actually physically connected to the pod, and we'll see where they're actually connected and how to interact with those phones. But then from there you can actually pull up a screenshot of the phone or send a command to the phone like dial this number, for example. So it's not exactly the best way to interact with the phone only because it's a remote phone, it's not physically there, you can't touch the buttons, but it will give you access to the screen and see what important feedback you're looking for there. So definitely an important application for us in the Proctor Labs environment. So let's jump over to the website and take a look at what we're actually trying to accomplish here. So proctorlabs.com is where we're at right now, and we've got our client login section here, which of course is going to be where after you booked rack time and stuff, you're going to log in here with your username and password that you created, and then you'll have access into the sessions that you booked. So let me log in here with my account, and you're going to have access now to this members area. I got a nice little welcome to Proctor Labs intro here. But the majority of time is going to be spent on the left side here, and 99.9% of the time, in fact, is probably going to be spent clicking this button, go to current VRAC session. But under here is some important stuff as well. You can view or cancel future sessions, edit profile, invoices, purchase VRAC sessions if you need more. And then the last thing here, VPN instructions, is where I kind of want to focus right now. So let's click that. And from there, you've got the Proctor Labs VPN access configuration, meaning the software VPN. You've also got the collaboration hardware VPN instructions, which is very important. Obviously, that's going to allow you to connect your physical phones that you have with you to your rack that you're working on, whatever rack that happens to be. So click this, and you can actually go through some of these instructions and basically what this video is in writing, essentially. You can see kind of the requirements that we have for the hardware and what kind of ports you can expect the phones to be on and that kind of thing. So definitely read through that and get familiar with how that actually works. But we do have, you can see here in the top, we have 2 configs. We have a switch config and a router config. And if you have a router switch hybrid, where you have a switch module in your router or something like that, you can apply the switch config there as well. Obviously the way that we have it set up is just one router and one switch. Right now in the demo that I'm planning on showing you here, it's going to be a 2811 router and a 3750 switch that I have on my end. So I can click on here and actually look through the configuration. Let me pull up both of these configurations actually. So let's go through the router section first real quick. So we've got, and I won't go through all of this in detail. I know this may be a fast forward part for you in the video, but really we've got this home network that we're trying to set up for you. This basically will take your router, erase the whole thing, and replace it with this configuration. That's the best way to do this, to guarantee that there are no issues. So we've got this network 192.168.14.0/24. That's where all your phones are going to be getting an IP address in. Also, any PCs or workstations that you connect to the switch are going to get that IP address, and then they'll be tunneled into the actual environment in the pod. So if you want to actually interact with the pod without doing a software VPN, you can basically have your computer get this address, this 14.0/24 address. So I would recommend doing that. It's a lot easier to do that. So scroll through some of this. You'll see this couple commands that may not be familiar to you. This sudo wire class Ethernet. Basically all this is doing is creating a tunnel for us from the Proctor Labs home router to our edge router or our WAN router. And that's going to actually, this is actually going to get you into the pod itself. So this making connection with your pod backbone router. So that's going to be necessary then for you to actually have CDP tunneled from your phones to the actual switch ports, so it does look like they're connected to the switch port. As I kind of scroll through some of these, you've got an IPsec client connection that we're going to be making here. Don't have to worry too much about that. We'll tell you how to get in there. And then all these interfaces as well. Like these interfaces are going to be essentially connected to your switch. You have all these sub-interfaces. Here's the physical interface, the inside private interface that is. You've got Fast Ethernet 0114, which is going to be your VLAN 14 interface if you do want to connect to PC. Also, we've got our phone interfaces as well. We've got these different different VLANs on these ports specifically, so they can be tunneled into the pod. So you don't want to change these VLANs at all. You want to leave them the same. Don't really change anything at all here, really, but just so you understand, these are specifically telling the pod when you get there what port the phone is going to be in. So essentially this 113 means put it in FA1013 on switch 1 in whatever pod it connects to. This one's FA1014, this one's FA1015, and so forth. So you can kind of get the idea of where they're going. So obviously if you change those VLANs, your pod is not going to work right. So try to keep this configuration. Obviously it's not going to be a good idea to change it. So going through, you can see actually in some of these, the Xconnect command, this 10.10.100.2, we're connecting to the backbone router itself. And that's where this connection is being made. So if your backbone connection's not up, your phones won't register. So good troubleshooting step right there, right? So let's actually go through the rest of this here. And we've got NAT on here as well. We've also got access lists to prevent security type things, vulnerabilities or anything that are coming in your network. I've got all that figured out. So really there's not a whole lot for you to do here except use the configuration. But just to give you an overview here of how it actually looks, let's kind of walk through this. So this is the overall network, right? You've got your home network over here, that you've got your home switch and you've got your home router. And so you've got your phones connected to the switch itself. And we didn't go through that configuration yet, but we will. And so the switch then is going to connect to the router via trunk, and then that router will connect over the internet and make a IPsec VPN tunnel, and not with the actual WAN router itself, but it's going to go specifically to the pods that we have connected. So your home router's over here, we're going over the internet, and then we're going to our WAN routers here at Proctor Labs. And then from there, that WAN router is going to connect you into one of the pods, and that's based on your authentication, right? So you're going to log in with your username and password that you have for Proctor Labs. It's going to say, oh, this user is assigned to pod 23, for example. And so that drops you in pod 23, and then from there, your router, the Xconnect communication, or the Xconnect configuration, is going to connect you to the backbone router in that pod 23. So the tunnel itself for the phone is going to be coming through pod 23 essentially, and imagine that this left side here is pod 23, and going to this address 10.10.100.2 on the backbone router. And then from there, that's how everything actually happens. So this is actually physically going through FA1024 on switch 1, and so that port then needs to be up. If that's down for some reason on your switch 1, then that's a problem. Obviously, the Proctor Labs support team can help you out with that. If that's some type of non-standard configuration, obviously don't shut that port down. So that type of thing. So just wanted to give you an overview there of how that actually looks. Don't get too bogged down in the detail here. All we're really doing is creating an IPsec VPN and then tunneling your phone traffic over layer 2 to your backbone router. And then your backbone router is disseminating that traffic to switch 1 on different ports, R2 on different ports, and then R3 on different ports. So it looks like your phones are actually connected into the routers. So wanted to go into that level of detail so you actually know what it's doing. So I hope that helped there. So real quick, let's look at the switch as well. The switch then has obviously ports on the switch that are configured with the same VLANs that we had in the router. So that way when it's trunked up to the router, it knows exactly where to go. One thing I want to mention too, which happens to be a bug with the 9971 phones, is CDP needs to be enabled locally on the switch. So that's why we have CDP enable here on your home switch. The reason why is because sometimes the camera doesn't work on the USB connected camera does not work on the 9971 phones because it does need CDP to have that camera enabled. And it's not necessarily very convenient because all we're doing is tunneling, CDP. So we're not using CDP on your local ports anyway. So, but you do have to have that enabled. So if for some reason, CDP is not enabled on your ports, make sure you enable that or your cameras won't necessarily work. I've seen them work sometimes, but not always. So make sure that CDP is enabled there. So not a whole lot to the configuration there. All you got to do is paste them in. And from there, we actually have to now make our VPN connection. So let me go to my router and we can start doing that. Let's go to the Proctor Labs home router. And this should be 192.168.14.1. So once you get that up and running in your network, got a PC connected, you should be able to hit that address without a problem. Username here is Proctor Labs and the password is going to be iPexpert home. And you'll actually see that in the configuration when you paste it in. So we've got logged in there. First thing you want to do is do a term mon. So that's going to turn your terminal session here, the monitor, on for that. So from there, we want to type the command crypto IPsec client EasyVPN. I'm tabbing it out, right? You can also question mark as well. Crypto IPsec client EasyVPN connect. So once you do that, it's going to actually come back, and here's the reason why I have term mon on, right? It's going to come back with a message saying, enter the command crypto IPsec client EasyVPN xoff. And so once you do that, you'll have to enter your username and password that you use for Proctor Labs. So let's click enter here, and let's wait for it to come back. It's going to ask me now for xoff. So it says enter this command. So what I usually do is I'll just take this command, copy it, and just paste it back in. And now it's going to ask me for a username. So I'll type in my normal username that I use for Proctor Labs. And so from there, you'll see that the actual connection comes up, got your line protocol come up, got the loopback 10,000 come up here as well. So this is a good sign, right? You've actually got the EasyVPN connection up. So from there, you should start seeing, after a few minutes, in each of your pods, the phone's actually coming online in the pod. And you can see that based on your show CDP neighbor command. So when you look at show CDP neighbors, you're going to see the MAC addresses of your local phones here, and the phones are to my right here. So if I look and see, it doesn't look like any of them are up yet. I've got some configuration on them, so it's just going to take a little bit of time. So that's how we actually make the connection itself. And if you wanted to drop the connection, if you wanted to, for some reason you have a problem, you want to redo the connection, just do a clear IPsec. Did I not type that right? Oh, I'm sorry, clear crypto. I always forget the crypto. Clear crypto IPsec client EasyVPN, and then you can hit carriage return and that'll be it. That'll actually clear the VPN, like take the VPN down essentially, and then you can build it up again. Although your authentication information will be stored locally in the router, so that way you don't have to enter the XAuth command again. The only way you have to enter that command again is if you reboot the router. So just FYI there. So we won't clear it now. Let's wait for it to come up, and looks like some of these phones are coming up now. So what we can do to verify whether the phones are accessible or not is, of course, go to the actual routers and switches themselves to see whether they're coming in. Easy way to do that is to actually go to Proctor Labs' website and get the information on how to connect. So let's go there. Let's get out of the VPN instructions here. And like I said, 99.9% of the time, you're going to be clicking on this Go to Current VRAC session. So let's click that. Click I agree. After reading this very carefully, of course, click I agree. And it gives you one more little warning. Hey, are you sure you've got the VPN stuff figured out? If you do, click continue. If not, go to show the VPN instructions again. So let's click continue in this case. And now you come up with the actual interface itself. So there's a couple things that we have here. We've got load lab. We've got the ability to load a specific lab, and you can see our volume 1 workbook in here. You can actually scroll down and load any one of those labs, either the initial part of the lab or the final configurations for that lab. And it'll actually go out and pull the snapshots off for the VMs, load them, also take your routers down and load the configurations on your routers. So this is very useful, of course, if you want to jump around the specific technologies and maybe you're comfortable with labs 1 through 15, but really lab 16 is that tough one that you want to hit really hard or something like that, and so you load the configuration there. And obviously we have every single lab available here as well. Volume 2 will be up here shortly. We'll get those up there so you can load those as well. So that's the load lab section. The section you'll probably be spending the most time in is this controls section though. So let's click on that and see the different devices you have here. The first set of devices that you have are the iOS devices, so all your routers. Got R1 through R3, switch 1, BB, and then all is the entire pod, including not just the routers, but the VMs as well. So from here we can do a clear line if you don't have access anymore, you don't want to get in the terminal server, like for some reason you got kicked out, you can do a clear line and you'll be able to get in. So basically we're using a terminal server and you telnet to that terminal server at the port that corresponds to R1, R2, R3, and then that gets you in the router itself. And that's in the Connect tab, we'll show that. So let's scroll down here too, and you can see the different servers that we have in the infrastructure, HQ Pub, Sub, IM Presence, UCCX, and so forth. We can revert that, when you click revert, that's actually doing a revert to the base snapshots, the base configuration, blank configuration on there, blank canvas for you to paint on. You also start the VM if it happens to be down for some reason. You can start it up, you can also stop it. From there, that's really the entire interface for control there. It's very simple, straightforward, easy to do. So what you want to do typically though when you get your session is revert the entire pod. Make sure that when you do that, it's going to basically set all your configs to the blank state, to the state where you can start configuring from the ground up. And take note though that when you have the revert entire pod option, you will not initially have access to your servers. Okay, I've had a lot of students have questions about this, and a lot of students have a bunch of headaches and pounding their head against the wall over this. Don't do that. So basically what this is just a test of infrastructure first. If we're loading the base configs, we need to make sure that first of all we go and make sure the infrastructure is correct, and then from there we can start configuring the phones. So a little giveaway here, but make sure that your switch 1 is trunked to your R1, and that will allow the passing of VLANs and so forth. So make sure that can happen. If that can't happen, then you won't be able to get into your servers. So that's the number one problem that we hear from students on these. So next tab, we're going to go over to Connect, and this is going to give you all the connection information as well as password information as well. So you can go through and hit each one of these servers, provided that you are VPN'd in. So if I click one of these for the HQ Pub, it'll pop up a new window and actually get you into the pub itself. So if I click that, Unified Communications Manager, it's going to load the actual login for that, and so we can log in from there. And so this kind of makes it easy. You can just easily click on these devices and so forth. So kind of scrolling down, we can see that from here we can do this telnet session to the pod itself, pod 20 in my case, .proctorlabs.com, on port 2006. So that's to get into switch 1. So switch 1 happens to be on that port on every single terminal server. So we click this, and it's actually going to pop up a terminal for me, and it's going to make me log in here as well. I'm actually connected to my other console session, so I'll close this out. But that's going to allow you to actually very easily click these and open up a new terminal session. So once, and these also, by the way, the pods are via iOS the pods via the terminal servers are accessible via the public network. So if you want to just telnet straight into pod 20, or not pod 20, but one of your pods, pod 21, 22, 23, whatever it is, .proctorlabs.com, and have your session set up, you can essentially get in from the public network without VPN. So easy to get in there. So now we've got the next tab is the power management tab. So you can see here, this actually shows you whether devices are currently switched on or not, which is very useful. So if you want to maybe hard reset a router, you can do that by just clicking the off button, and that will power down the router physically, and then you can power it back up from here as well. So definitely very useful interface. It's very simple to use, easy to click around and figure things out here. So let's see now, we've got this figured out for how we get in the devices. Let's jump in the device, and in my own little session here, I'll jump over to switch 1, and actually I've gotten kicked out. Let me jump back in. jump into the session. Of course, you can save your username and password, which is very useful in these sessions. So jump into switch 1 and do a show CDP neighbor. And you can see actually right here on FA1013, 14, and 15, we've got CDP neighbors. And this would not happen unless you have your phones remotely connected successfully. So these phones, if I look here, FA1013, this 42E3 MAC address, let's do the detail on that. Show CDP neighbor FA1013 detail. And that's a 9971. If I go look over here at my MAC address, that is 42E3, and that's what I have here as well. So you know that this phone is now successfully tunneled over your VPN in there. So this is where they're going to show up, FA1013, 14, and 15. 15 is actually going to be your PSTN phone. And I do want to talk about that as well. But if I go back to R3, we can do the same thing. Show CDP neighbors. If you've got a phone on gig 022 and 023, then success, you've got your phone actually connected over layer 2 there. So from there, obviously you do your configurations and according to the labs, go through the Volume 1 workbook, whatever you want to do. So from there, your phone's easily configurable from your network. So if I go look over here now at my PSTN phone, how do I get that registered? So normally the PSTN phone is connected on port, if you do just to show run, port FA1022, you can see that. And I've got some other configurations in here. This is definitely not the blank config. But you can see FA1022 is the PSTN phone. That's actually in the rack itself. Now, you'll notice that obviously the PSTN phone comes in on FA1015. So we'd want to copy this configuration over to FA1015. And most likely in later versions of this config, this will already be done for you. We're working on getting that done. So, but in the meantime, though, know that you're going to need to copy this configuration over to FA1015 as I've done here. So you can use a remote PSTN phone. But that's not all you have to do. It used to be that you would just connect to the pod and then there was a router that ran CME. But now we're actually using Communications Manager for the registration of this phone. So what you need to do at this point is get into your Backbone PSTN or Backbone Publisher server. So if we go back to Proctor Labs, we can go to Connect tab here and take note of the username and password. It's actually different than any other one. This one's admin and CCIE iPexpert. So let's click on that, 10.10.254.11. And I think it came up, where'd it go? I'm going to close some of these out here. I think I've got something going on with my cookies in the browser. So let me go ahead and do a 10.10.254.11, which is the actual address. So I'm going to jump in there and log in with, of course, it was admin and CCIE iPexpert. CCIE iPexpert. And from there, we want to go to the actual device and phone list. And there's our Backbone PSTN phone. Of course, I've already done this. It's already registered. Yours, when you jump in here, will most likely not be registered unless you're on my pod. So what happens is you're going to have to go in here and click on the phone. Make sure it's a 9971 or whatever phone you're using. Make sure that you copy this configuration to that type of phone. But all I'm going to do here is just replace the MAC address and hit Apply Config. So how do I get the MAC address for my PSTN phone? Easily, I can go to Show CDP Neighbor FA1015 Detail. And I can see that that's the 9971 phone for my PSTN. I can copy this MAC address exactly and paste it into the configuration here in the MAC address, click Apply Config, and that's it. Now your PSTN phone is registered. So you shouldn't have any problems doing that. And obviously this is pretty basic, right? We're just taking the config that's already in the PSTN phone and putting our MAC address to it. That's all it really comes down to. So from there, we've got our PSTN phone registered. We've got CDP showing up on our switch 1, our R2, R3. Now let's see if we can actually use phone view. And this is going to be when you've got your phones actually configured in the system. So like for example, let's take our PSTN phone. We've got this phone registered. It's configured in the system. At least you don't have to actually have device CSS or line or anything on it. Just have to have it physically in the system. And the reason that is because you have to have this phone associated with the PV user, which is phone view user, which is built into every single one of your pods. So if you go to user management and end user, click find, this PV user is the only user that's in there initially. So click on that. You need to make sure that you have a controlled device association with your phone that you want to control. And that would just be done by clicking on this device association, click find, and it's going to bring you a list of all the numbers and also phones as well in the system. So you can see this is the same phone. That's why there's so many check marks, because we have so many lines. So you just would check the phone that you're interested in controlling and then hit the save selected and changes and go back to the user, and then you should have that phone in your controlled devices. If it's not in your controlled devices, of course it's not going to work. You're not going to be able to pull a screenshot from the phone. You won't be able to actually send commands to the phone itself either. So definitely want to have that in your configuration there. So from there, we can go now and configure all the other sites, right? HQ and Site B, which is already configured. So they're going to be the exact same way as this, right? You're going to have to drop those phone configurations into your PV user so they can actually be used by phone view. The other thing now, we've got CME to worry about as well, and that's a little bit different. What I want to show you now is the actual configuration for that, and that's basically just this configuration that you should basically copy and paste. Now we've got voice register global here to accommodate SIP phones. We've got telephony service to accommodate skinny phones. So once you get your actual telephony service and voice register configured, all you have to do really is copy and paste this entire section in here. And this is going to turn on the configuration for phone view, really, is what it comes down to. We've got HTTP, we've got the XML interface here that's actually going to interface with phone view. And also we've got this authentication URLs, and these are going to be necessary for phone view to authenticate to actually control the phone. So we need to have these enabled, as well as web and SSH access. So easy copy and paste after you've got everything configured. And then from there, all we have to do is jump into our test PC and HQ, and that's got phone view connected to it. So let's go there real quick. And it's on my other screen here. Let me drag it over. And let me try to get it into a viewable area for us as well. Okay. All right, so from there, this is what your test PC is going to look like. And you'll notice also, in addition to having phone view here at the bottom left, we have all these other applications that you're going to have available to you in the actual CCIE lab as well. An SFTP server, a PuTTY client to SSH and Telnet. There's an IP communicator on here if you'd like to use that. Cisco Jabber, Cisco UCCX editor. We have Notepad++, which is available to you in the lab as well, which is nice. The RTMT for troubleshooting, and also a TFTP server as well. So pretty extensive selection here on the test PC, so make sure that you take advantage of that. But for phone view itself, all you want to do first of all is double click on phone view, bring it up, and it takes a second here on the test PC, but it's going to start the actual engine to run phone view. From there, we don't really have to do anything when it actually launches. There's a file that's already built. It's a PVD file that phone view data is what it stands for, and that has all the sites already pre-programmed into it. And of course, when I save this file, I save this using all of my phones, so your phones aren't going to be in there. It's not going to be accurate. So what you have to do is simply this. Let's double click this as it comes up here. And the phone view data file is actually saved on the desktop. So if I click open and go to phoneview.pvd, let's click open there, and now I see magically all these phones come up, which is awesome, right? So we've got all these phones that we can interact with, but not so fast, really. We're noticing here, well, there's a 7962, it looks like. That's a weird screen. That's 9971. This one's not the phone I had, so forth, right? So these, maybe your phones don't even have extensions, right? So this, like I said, these are my phones that I had configured a while ago. So what we do from here now is go to the group menu and go to update and just say update all. And what that's going to do is go back and query each of these individual devices that are on the servers and see what the new IP address is, what the new MAC addresses are. You can see in the bottom here in phone view, what it's trying to do, it's updating the group HQ, resetting the data, querying call manager, and you're going to see this move pretty quickly here in a second. And that's going to go and find devices HQ, Site B, and Site C, and then from there, it's going to display the phones in this format that you don't have any screenshots at all. This is actual data for the phone. Now what I normally will do, just to make sure everything's working correctly, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 phones here, which is correct. And then from there, I would just do a select all and go to this phone screenshot here in the top. And from there, it's going to go out and try to grab screenshots. What you'll notice here is the 7965 phones are going to come up first. And that's because the 9971 phones are pretty slow when it comes to phone view. Not the fault of phone view, not the fault of iPexpert. I would go ahead and put this one squarely on Cisco, right? Cisco's 9971 phones are not necessarily powered for this type of application. And there's a lot of power dedicated in other areas. So basically this is going to prevent this from going quickly. And there's nothing you can really do about that, unfortunately. So you'll notice that there's we've got screenshots for everything here, but there's a response time on the 9971s of about 10 seconds per screenshot or so, or a little bit less than that. The 7965s are a lot less than that, so they're easier to use, I'd say, through phone view. This little slider down here that I'm adjusting is obviously going to be very useful, so you can see the phone in great detail. Zoom in on it, and this is about the size of an actual phone screen right there. So from there, if I wanted to maybe dial a number from this phone, I can easily punch the keys here, or I can go to this drop-down box at the top, type a command, or I can select one of all these template commands essentially that are used. I've dialed 0123, so I can just kind of replace 0123 with whatever number I want, and I'll just say 1001. Now here at the bottom, when you first send the command, this is the send button here, you're going to notice that CTI is going to initialize the first time you do it. It's going to take a couple seconds to actually ring the phone itself, so you're going to be wondering, why isn't this working? Is this broken? It's completely normal. So if I hit send here, it's going to initialize CTI for 9-1, and then after, I don't know, 10 seconds or so, you'll actually hear this call go through. This is going to go from 1002 to 1001. So, and also you can see that the queue here is going to fill up. It's got one command in the queue, and see there the command went through, and you have a success that came through. Now notice that there's nothing updated on the screen at all. That's because we don't have automatic screenshot enabled on the phone. So I'm going to turn that off. That's the most annoying sound you'll ever hear. Okay. So, so from there, we can do this automatic screenshot. If I right-click on it, say automatic screenshot, it'll now go out and take a screenshot as often as it can. And so let me do that over here as well, and take the view down so we can see both of these phones at the same time. Whoops. So you have the applications menu here. Let me actually close this out. I'll hit exit. Now the phone is actually blank right now. So you'll see, I mean, it takes a little while for it to grab the screenshot here. And it's just it's trying to refresh as we speak. And it looks like it's running that command here in the queue. There, it finally updated. So it takes some time with the 9971. So if I were to say new call here, right, I've got two keypads, the 79XX keypad and the 89XX keypad I can select. So either of those have to be selected to interact with the phone successfully. But if I click new call here, which is soft key 2, the response is instant on the phone, but I don't see it here on the screenshot automatically. So it's going to take a second here and refresh, and there it is. And now I can dial 2001, and that's dialing site B at this point. You can see the response is not super quick there, but it's a little bit better than the 9971. So obviously what you'll see there is a little bit slower interaction than being on a desk phone next to you, of course, but it will get the job done in terms of testing calls for sure. And also, you know, we've seen a couple issues, not necessarily issues, but speed issues with video as well, because it's just trying to transmit more data is what it comes down to. So you're taking a screenshot every single time, and it really can be intensive on the system to have automatic screenshot enabled for both of these phones. So I usually try to only turn that on the phones that I'm currently testing with, rather than every single phone, because you got to go through and there's obviously commands in the queue that build up. So your queue can be pretty deep at that point. So try to only do that on the phones you're using. Once again, this is phone view. This is on the remote test PC at HQ. I got in there through remote desktop, and of course clicked on phone view here and loaded this phone view.pvd. By the way, you can't double click on that. You have to actually open it from the application. So you do that with the file open once again, and then just update your groups. And then from there, that's going to go out, query all the call manager systems, get the updated phone information, and then you can control it from there. So just review. We went over the Proctor Labs website, went over the actual hard VPN configuration, what it's actually doing in the hard VPN, how to actually check where your phones are coming up as, make sure that you have a connection there, how to actually configure the phone view and get the actual phones associated with the PV user and logged into phone view so you can interact with phones in the lab rack if you want. Obviously, there's no reason to load phone view if you have hard phones next to you. So definitely this is going to be useful if you have no phones and want to use the rack phones as well. So from there, obviously for CME, once again, want to make sure that everybody gets this one. We have to copy and paste all these commands into CME. That's all there is to it. Nothing's really done for call manager except adding the device to the user itself, to the PV user. So from there, that's pretty much going to cover the lab overview and the Proctor Lab setup overview. Obviously, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to email us, support@proctorlabs.com, and open a case with us, anything like that. Anything we can, any way we can be of service, we'd love to do that. Also, in addition to the Proctor Labs website here, feel free to go on the forums here, which is community.ipexpert.com, and you can get in here and actually post questions about the lab in general, workbooks, any problems that you're having, problems with the labs themselves. You can ask questions in here, and I'm checking this all the time, so I'll definitely respond to you if you come in here. So definitely check that out if you get a chance, and that'll be a good resource for you as well. So thank you again for watching the video. Hope you enjoy Proctor Labs website, and definitely work hard and happy labbing.